We are in late March 2026 right now.
Right.
And, the Easter holidays are basically upon us. Spring break is moving through the calendar.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Exactly. And if you follow the traditional rhythms of real estate, this is the exact moment the market is supposed to shake off the winter frost, right?
Nickname is spring thaw.
The spring thaw, yes. Inventory is supposed to, flood the system, buyers emerge from hibernation, and transaction velocity just spikes.
That's the textbook expectation, sure.
Right. But looking at the brand new, primary data crossing the wire this week, we are absolutely not seeing a thaw.
No, we are not. Not even close.
We are looking at a market that is locked in a deep structural freeze. And to understand the magnitude of this friction, we are pulling apart the February 2026 North Texas Real Estate Information System monthly MLS summary report.
And this is, it is arguably one of the most critical data sets we have analyzed this year. Because it's compiled by the Texas Real Estate Research Center, Texas A&M University, and it just provides this unfiltered, really localized diagnostic of a massive geographic footprint.
Yeah, and we are looking at a market in a profound state of transition here.
Exactly. Capturing everything from, the dense urban core of Dallas all the way out to the far exurban frontiers like Jack County.
Right.
The data just reveals this behavioral economics case study that is, playing out in real time.
Before we start tearing into the cross stabs, though, I need to make a quick point of order for you listeners.
The pronunciation thing.
Yes, the pronunciation thing. Because if you are discussing this data, and trust me, you will want to after we get through these numbers, the acronym for the North Texas Real Estate Information System, NTREIS, is pronounced NET.
It rhymes with rust.
Right, rhymes with rust. If you spell it out letter by letter at a networking event or a local zoning meeting, you will immediately flag yourself as an outsider. So NetTress.
It's a small but, highly necessary piece of local operational intelligence.
Absolutely. So let's define the battlefield here.
Okay.
The NetTree data covers an ocean of Texas real estate. We are tracking macro trends across the entire Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington metroplex, but the footprint pushes out deep into the surrounding geography.
Right. Anderson, Bosque, Young.
Exactly, and heavily into places like Jack County, which we'll talk about later because it's increasingly becoming this vital barometer for how far the affordability push is driving buyers.
It really is.
But what we have in front of us is a narrative of bizarre contradictions. So let's look at the baseline first, right? The traditional single-family home.
The anchor of the American housing market.
Exactly.
Because, if you want to understand the fringes, you first have to measure the center of gravity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
So in February 2026, we saw 5,588 single-family homes sold across this footprint.
Okay.
The year-over-year sales volume is exactly $2,749,637,917.
That's a very specific number.
Right. Nearly $2.75 billion changing hands in just a 28-day period.
Which sounds huge.
It sounds massive.
Right.
But the velocity is what demands your attention here. The total sales count is down 6% from last year.
Wow.
And the total dollar volume is also down exactly 6%.
So we have less activity and just less capital flowing through the entire system.
Exactly. Now, basic supply and demand mechanics, they suggest that if transaction volume drops by a solid 6%, you should see a corresponding softening in price to induce liquidity.
Right. Sellers should be cutting asking prices to clear out their inventory.
Exactly. But the pricing data is completely detached from the volume data. It's wild.
Oh, it really is.
The median price for a single-family home right now sits at $389,900. That is a microscopic 1% drop year over year.
Basically nothing.
Basically nothing. And the average price, $492,061. The change on the average price is a perfectly flat 0%.
A flat line on the average price alongside a 6% drop in volume.
Yeah.
That indicates a massive psychological standoff.
A standoff. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we are looking at a fundamental bid-ask spread where neither party is willing to capitulate. The seller is suffering from this potent combination of the endowment effect and historical price anchoring.
Oh, expand on that. Price anchoring.
Right. So they remember what their neighbor's house sold for at the peak of the market, back in 2023 or 2024.
Oh, yeah. The glory days.
Exactly. And that peak number becomes calcified in their mind. They feel their home is inherently worth that premium simply because they possess it.
even if the market has totally shifted.
Right. Rather than adjust to the current cost of capital, they choose to hold. They just let the property sit on the market.
So they are effectively choosing illiquidity over what they perceive as a loss.
Precisely.
Even if, say, they bought the house in 2018 and are still sitting on just massive equity.
It doesn't matter. To them, it's a paper loss. It's a psychological wound rather than a realized financial loss.
But on the other side of that transaction, the buyer isn't budging either.
No, the buyer is looking at the macro environment. Elevated interest rates, persistent inflation in other sectors, rising insurance premiums, and the math simply does not support paying yesterday's peak price.
The buyer is effectively on strike.
They really are. And the friction here is largely driven by, well, what the industry calls the golden handcuffs.
The sub 4% mortgages?
Exactly. The ones originated between 2020 and 2022. If a seller does not have an absolute catastrophic life event forcing them to move.
The 4Ds, right?
Yeah, the Ds, death, divorce, defaults, or relocation for a new job. If they don't have one of those, they simply won't sell.
Because giving up a 3% mortgage to take on a 6.5 or 7% mortgage requires just a massive sacrifice in purchasing power.
A huge sacrifice. So the organic churn of the market, the families trading up for an extra bedroom or downsizing for retirement, that has totally evaporated.
Which leaves only the forced sellers and the highly motivated buyers.
Exactly, resulting in this low-volume, flat-price stalemate.
Which means if you are a seller listening to this deep dive right now and you are preparing to list your home this spring, you are entering a market that has zero tolerance for aspirational pricing.
None at all.
If you throw a high number out there just to, see what happens, you are not going to generate a bidding war. You are going to generate total silence.
Total silence. Buyers have too much friction in their own financial models to entertain a delusional listing price right now.
And the longer you sit on the market, the more stale your listing becomes, which only invites aggressive lowball offers down the line.
Yeah, the holding costs of an aspirational price are just severe.
Property taxes alone.
Right. Every month a property sits unsold is another month of property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and the opportunity cost of that locked-up equity.
Sellers who don't price to the current reality are effectively financing their own stubbornness.
That is a perfect way to phrase it.
But, okay, if the single-family market is completely seized up in this multi-billion-dollar standoff, buyers still have to live somewhere. Life continues, right?
Household formation continues.
Exactly. If you have a family or you just landed a new job in North Texas, you cannot pause your life waiting for the macroeconomic conditions to perfectly align. You have to find shelter.
You do.
This is where the affordability pivot in the data becomes, honestly, the most revealing part of the February report. We have to follow the displaced buyers down the property type ladder to see how they are compromising. So let's look at condos and townhomes.
Okay, the traditional stepping stones to single-family ownership.
Right.
Historically, these categories absorb the overflow when the primary market gets too expensive.
Historically, yes. But the February 2026 data shows something entirely different happening. Let's take townhouses first.
That's it.
We saw 193 townhouse sales.
Okay.
That transaction volume is down a massive 20% year over year.
A 20% drop in volume. Wow.
Buyers are fleeing the townhouse market, and the reason becomes glaringly obvious when you look at the price. The median price for a townhouse right now is $389,000, which is only down 3% from last year.
Wait. The median price of a townhouse is $389,000.
Yep.
And the median price of a detached single-family home in the same footprint is $389,900.
A difference of exactly $900.
That is absolutely stunning.
It's crazy. Why would any rational buyer choose a townhouse where you share walls, you lack a private yard, and you are burdened with monthly homeowners association dues that are likely spiking due to rising insurance costs, when they could buy a detached single-family home for essentially the exact same entry price?
Well, they wouldn't.
Right.
The value proposition of the townhouse has completely collapsed. I mean, townhomes are supposed to offer a 15 to 20% discount to single-family homes to compensate for the loss of autonomy and the addition of HOA fees.
Makes sense.
But because townhome builders and sellers are trying to capture single-family premiums, the buyer pool has simply evaporated. A 20% drop in volume is the market actively rejecting the product.
Rejecting it outright. But then the condo market is equally fascinating, but for totally different reasons.
Okay, what are we seeing there?
We saw 178 condo sales, which is a 7% drop in volume. But unlike townhomes, condo sellers are actually capitulating on price.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The median price of a condo took a 12% nosedive down to $229,250.
A 12% drop. That is a massive structural repricing.
It is. Why do you think that's happening specifically with condos?
Well, condos are highly sensitive to the cost of capital and insurance. Across Texas, we are seeing condo associations forced to pass massive special assessments onto owners.
Right, because of weather events and deferred maintenance?
Exactly. Deferred maintenance and skyrocketing building insurance premiums. Buyers are factoring those monthly carrying costs into their purchasing power. To get a buyer to close on a condo in 2026, the seller basically has to absorb a significant price cut to offset that math.
But even with a 12% discount, volume is still dropping. Buyers do not want them.
No, they don't.
Which brings us to the only bright spot in the residential sales data.
The manufactured home.
Yes, the manufactured home. We saw 21 sales in February.
I mean, in the context of the DFW footprint, 21 transactions is a blip.
It's a total blip, but the trend line is what matters here. Manufactured home sales are up 11% year over year.
Wow.
It is the sole residential category showing positive transaction growth. And the median price, $225,000.
Okay.
Now, it took an 18% price drop to get there, but at $225,000, it is moving.
That represents a profound shift in consumer preference. And it's driven by absolute affordability exhaustion.
Exhaustion is the perfect word for it.
I mean, look at the options for a buyer with a $250,000 budget in North Texas right now.
There are almost none.
Exactly. They are completely locked out of the single-family and townhouse markets. Their only choices are a condo or a manufactured home.
Right.
The data shows us that if a buyer is forced to choose between a dense, multifamily condo building with unpredictable HOA fees or a manufactured home on a small piece of land where they have their own four walls and no shared ceiling, they are increasingly choosing the manufactured home.
Which fundamentally rewrites the narrative of the starter home, doesn't it?
Completely. For decades, the urban or suburban condo was the undisputed first rung on the property ladder, for young professionals or blue-collar families.
Right.
But the stigma around manufactured housing is just dissolving in real time under the crushing weight of economic necessity.
Buyers are basically sacrificing traditional stick-built foundations for autonomy and a predictable monthly payment.
Exactly. And we are seeing this heavily in the outer rings of the Metroplex, out toward Jack County and Wise County, where zoning actually allows for this type of housing footprint.
Let's talk about that, because the outer counties are acting as the relief valves for this exact pressure.
They have to be. You cannot easily drop a manufactured home into a fully developed suburb in Collin County.
No, the HOA would have a meltdown.
Right, due to intense zoning restrictions and neighborhood covenants. But as buyers push further west and north into jurisdictions with more flexible land use policies, the manufactured home becomes the most viable solution for affordable homeownership. It meets the buyer exactly where their wallet is.
But let's look at the segment of the population that looks at the $400,000 single-family standoff, looks at the depreciating condo market, looks at the manufactured home option, and decides to simply walk away from the purchase market entirely.
They still need a roof over their heads.
They still need a roof, which takes us directly into the leasing data. The mirror image of the sales freeze is a roaring fire in the rental market.
Absolutely. Because when the cost of acquiring debt becomes prohibitive, capital flows into securing leases. It is the ultimate substitution effect.
And the volume here is staggering. In February 2026, we saw 3,240 single-family leases signed.
Over 3,000.
Yeah, that is an 8% increase year over year. The total dollar volume of those signed leases jumped 14% to $8.45 million.
So demand is incredibly high.
Yet, despite this surge in demand, the median single-family rent actually ticked down by 2%, landing at $2,250 a month.
Which is really interesting. A 2% dip in median rent while volume surges 8% indicates a highly saturated supply side.
Where is all that supply coming from?
Well, over the last few years, we have seen a massive influx of build-to-rent communities, institutional investors buying up single-family stock, and accidental landlords.
Accidental landlords, people who had to move but wouldn't sell?
Exactly. Homeowners who had to relocate but refused to give up their 3% mortgage, so they just threw their house on the rental market instead.
Right.
That flood of inventory means landlords cannot push rents higher. They have to shave off a few dollars, maybe offer a month of free rent, just to secure a tenant.
Because there's a ceiling on what a family can pay.
Exactly. The ceiling on household income dictates that a family can only absorb so much monthly rent before they break. $2,250 is pushing the absolute limit for the median household in this footprint.
But the friction is fundamentally different in the condo rental market. This is the statistic that jumped off the page for me.
Oh, I know the way you're talking about.
We saw 198 condo leases signed in February. That is a 32% increase in transaction volume.
A massive spike.
Massive. And unlike the single-family leases, condo rents did not drop. The median condo rent went up 5%, hitting $1,925 a month.
This is the pressure cooker of the housing market.
It really is. I mean, think about the psychology here. A buyer wants to purchase a $250,000 home. They realize they can't.
Right.
They refuse to buy a depreciating condo, so they decide to rent one instead while they wait for the single-family market to normalize.
They enter what is effectively a holding pattern.
Exactly. But because thousands of other frustrated buyers are making the exact same calculation, they are flooding the sub-$2,000 rental space.
And landlords in the condo space are looking at this captive audience. They see the absolute desperation for units priced under that psychological $2,000 barrier, and they're leveraging that demand to push rents up by 5%.
Which creates a really weird dynamic for investors.
It's the yield versus growth dilemma playing out in real time. The underlying asset, the condo itself, is bleeding value, down 12% on the sales side.
Yeah.
But the cash flow generated by the asset is surging because of the bottleneck of locked-out buyers.
So if you are an investor listening to this and you're holding a condo or a starter home, the data is telling you to lean heavily into your leasing strategy.
Absolutely. The tenant pool is deep, highly qualified, and highly motivated right now.
But you have to be sober about the fact that your equity is flat or declining. You are making your money on the yield, not the appreciation.
Precisely. And this is why looking exclusively at the macro, aggregated data can be dangerous.
Oh, totally.
The macro data gives you the weather report for the entire state, but real estate operates at the neighborhood level. To truly understand the friction in this market, we have to look at the micro anomalies hidden within the localized data tables of the Netrons report.
Yes, because the localized data is where the engine of the market is visibly misfiring. Let's dig into some specific cities because the divergence here is extreme. Take Corinth.
Okay, Corinth.
In Corinth, the median price dropped from $440,000 last year to $417,000 this February.
A noticeable 5% correction.
Yeah, but the real story is the days on market, or DOM. It expanded from 47 days last year to 87 days this year. Homes in Corinth are taking roughly 3 months to clear the market.
That is the textbook definition of a decelerating market.
Yeah, inventory builds up. Buyers have more choices, they take their time with inspections and financing, and the seller is forced to lower their price to compete.
It is a logical, orderly cooling process.
It makes complete sense, but then you look at Corsicana and logic just leaves the room.
Oh, Corsicana.
Corsicana is the wildest statistical ride in the entire report. The average price of a home in Corsicana jumped from $222,000 last year to $315,000 this February.
Wow.
That is a $93,000 explosion in the average price. If you just read the headline, you would think Corsicana is the hottest boomtown in Texas.
Well, a nearly 42% increase in average price in a single year usually implies a massive corporate relocation, a new major highway completion, or a fundamental repricing of the town's geography.
Right. But look at the underlying mechanics. The sold-to-list price ratio in Corsicana plummeted from 91.9% down to 88.9%.
Which means buyers are aggressively negotiating.
They are securing massive discounts off the asking price. And the days on market, it tripled. It went from 58 days to a staggering 174 days, half a year.
Half a year on the market.
So wait, if homes are sitting on the market for 6 months, and sellers are capitulating by taking 11% off their asking price to finally get a deal done, the only way the average price jumps by $93,000 is if the composition of what actually sold changed dramatically.
Right. The underlying market didn't appreciate. The mix of inventory skewed the math.
Explain how that happens statistically.
It's exactly what happens when you rely on averages instead of medians in a low liquidity environment. You have deduced the statistical trap perfectly.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Imagine a scenario where the standard $200,000 homes in Corsicana are completely locked up in that 3% mortgage standoff we discussed earlier.
Okay, so nobody is trading the mid-tier housing stock.
Exactly. But out on the periphery, there are 3 or 4 massive luxury ranch properties, or perhaps commercial adjacent agricultural estates that have been sitting on the market for 8 or 9 months.
Ah, the big fish.
Right. They were originally priced at maybe $1.5 million. The sellers finally throw their hands up in February 2026. They slash their asking prices down to $1.2 million to find a cash buyer, and the deals close.
Oh, and those few massive multi-million-dollar transactions completely warp the arithmetic for the entire town.
Yes. They drag the average price up by $100,000, creating the illusion of a boom.
But because those ranches sat unsold for so long, they dragged the average days on market up to 174.
Exactly. And because the sellers took a bath on the final negotiation, they dragged the sold-to-list ratio down to 88%.
The headline metric is a lie.
It is complete statistical illusion. The reality on the ground in Corsicana is a sluggish, highly illiquid market where buyers have massive leverage over exhausted sellers.
And speaking of exhausted sellers, look at the data out of Lancaster.
Oh, the Lancaster numbers are brutal.
In the secondary tables, Lancaster showed a sold-to-list ratio that collapsed from an already weak 89.6% down to an abysmal 71.6%.
Buyers are securing nearly 30% discounts.
And the days on market for a recent transaction logged in at an unbelievable 759 days.
Over 2 years. I mean, 759 days is not a real estate listing. It is a hostage situation.
Think about the absolute financial and psychological bloodbath that represents for a seller.
Seriously.
For 2 years, you are paying property taxes on a vacant house, or you are keeping your family in a constant state of show-ready stress.
The photos on the listing portals are from 2 autumns ago. The digital footprint is entirely stale.
Exactly. Buyers look at a 759-day listing, and they don't see a home. They see distress.
The market smells blood in the water. At that point, the property is stigmatized. Buyers assume there's a massive structural defect, a title issue, or a completely uncooperative seller.
So when an offer finally does materialize,
it isn't a market value offer. It is an opportunistic, predatory offer. A buyer comes in at 70 cents on the dollar, fully expecting to be rejected.
But the seller, who has absorbed 24 months of carrying costs and mental fatigue, finally just capitulates to stop the bleeding.
That is how you arrive at a 71.6% sold-to-list ratio.
Wow. And we see a similar velocity collapse in Crandall, where days on market jumped from 21 days to 86 days, a fourfold increase.
It's everywhere.
The takeaway here for you, the listener, is vital. You cannot consume real estate news through broad headlines.
No, you really can't.
If you read an article claiming North Texas prices remain flat, you cannot assume that applies to your specific subdivision in Corinth or Lancaster or out in Jack County. You must look at the days on market.
Dom is the ultimate truth teller.
It measures the velocity of capital. And right now, in these micro markets, capital is barely moving.
Which transitions us perfectly into what is arguably the most alarming data point in the entire February 2026 report.
I know where you're going with this.
Right. We have spent this analysis looking at existing housing, where people are living today, the friction in the rental market, the standoff between current buyers and sellers. But the most important question for the long-term health of the Texas economy is, where will these people live tomorrow? Or 3 years from now.
And to answer that, we have to evaluate the land and commercial sales data.
Exactly.
This is the leading indicator. The commercial and land metrics dictate the future supply of the housing market. And the data here isn't just sluggish, it is flashing red.
Oh, it's a siren.
Let's look at the raw numbers. In February 2026, across this massive net Tross footprint, there were only 162 land sales.
That is a catastrophic 44% drop year over year.
The dollar volume for land transactions is $72.8 million, which is down exactly 50%. The amount of money flowing into raw land has been cut in half.
Cut in half.
And yet the median price for land actually went up 9% to $185,000.
Interesting.
On the commercial side, it is equally bleak. Transaction volume is down 34%, and the median price for a commercial sale dropped 36% to $462,500.
So a 50% reduction in land dollar volume is a systemic freeze.
Right.
It represents the development industry collectively slamming on the brakes. The timeline for housing production is long. When a builder lists a new construction home in 2026, the land for that home was likely acquired in 2023 or 2024.
Because the pipeline involves complex zoning approvals, environmental studies, entitlement processes, utility infrastructure development, and vertical construction, it takes years.
Precisely. So when you see land transactions drop by 44% today, you are looking at the missing housing inventory of 2028 and 2029.
The builders are simply refusing to acquire dirt. But why? If we have a massive affordability crisis and a desperate need for more inventory to break the single-family standoff, why aren't developers buying up land to build the solution?
It comes down to the cost of the capital stack.
Okay, unpack that.
Developers rely on a mix of equity and heavily leveraged debt, often mezzanine financing or high-interest acquisition loans, to carry raw land through the entitlement process.
Right.
And raw land produces zero income. It generates no yield. It only generates property taxes and interest payments. With interest rates remaining elevated in 2026, the carrying cost of raw dirt is toxic to a developer's balance sheet.
The risk premium is simply too high.
Exactly. So they stop buying. They decide to build out the inventory they already own and then pause their acquisition pipelines until the macroeconomic environment shifts.
Okay, that perfectly explains the volume drop, but it doesn't explain the price increase.
Right.
If demand for land has fallen off a cliff and volume is down 50%, the price of land should be plummeting, yet the median price went up 9%. That feels totally contradictory.
It is a classic case of survivor bias in the dataset.
Oh, fascinating. How so?
Because the cost of holding speculative, unentitled land is so punitive right now, the only developers still willing to deploy capital are the heavily capitalized institutional players.
The deep pockets.
Right. And they are only buying premium, fully entitled, shovel-ready parcels in prime locations. The speculative buyers, the ones who used to buy cheap, peripheral dirt in the outer counties just to hold it in their portfolios, they have vanished.
So because only the most expensive sure-thing land is transacting, it artificially drags the median price of closed sales up by 9%.
Exactly. The cheap land isn't getting cheaper. It's simply not selling at all, so it drops out of the mathematical equation.
We can see this capitulation happening in real time if we look at Weatherford.
Yes.
In the report, the median land price in Weatherford crashed from $217,125 last year down to an astonishing $65,000 this year.
A massive crash.
And the days on market climbed to 165 days.
Weatherford is the clearest indicator of the speculative market collapsing. A median land price of $65,000 tells us that massive multi-acre subdivision plots are no longer transacting.
The big development money has exited Weatherford.
Completely. The only things changing hands are likely small, individual, unimproved lots being bought by retail buyers or custom home builders. The institutional scale has vanished.
But if we extrapolate this trend forward, the implications are honestly terrifying.
They really are.
I mean, the population of Texas is not shrinking. Corporate relocations to the DFW Metroplex are still happening. People are still forming households, even if they're currently parked in the condo rental waiting room.
Right, the demand isn't going away.
So if builders are acquiring 44% less land today, we are mathematically guaranteeing a massive supply cliff at the end of the decade.
That is the inevitable outcome of this friction. Fast forward to 2029. Let's assume interest rates have normalized, the golden handcuffs unlock, and the buyers currently waiting on the sidelines flood back into the purchase market.
They will be met by a catastrophic lack of new construction inventory.
Because the land to build those homes was never purchased in 2026.
So the builders are inadvertently setting the stage for the next massive price spike.
Yes. By halting land acquisitions today to protect their current balance sheets, they are ensuring that when demand returns, supply will be non-existent. Prices will skyrocket again.
It is a vicious, structurally embedded boom and bust cycle.
It is the ultimate leading indicator, and right now, it is signaling a severe bottleneck in our future housing capacity.
This brings us to the final dimension of the data, the physical geography. The Net Trays report includes mapping that visualizes this massive footprint, and it provides crucial context for how these macroeconomic forces physically alter the state.
Real estate is inherently spatial. You cannot understand the numbers without understanding the map.
And the scale of the coverage is immense. You have the high-density economic engines of Collin County, Frisco, Plano, McKinney.
The major hubs.
Right. You move east to Hunt County with Greenville and Royce City, north up to Cook County. You swing out west into Taylor County covering Abilene, down south through Johnson County, Burleson, and Cleburne.
It's huge.
And critically, you push into the far western frontiers of the dataset into places like Jack County, Wise County, and Brown County. It is an enormous swath of Texas. And what the maps demonstrate so vividly is the physical manifestation of the affordability crisis.
We refer to this geographic displacement as the halo effect.
So let's trace how that halo effect actually functions, especially regarding counties that 10 years ago weren't even considered part of the DFW commuter shed.
Okay, think of the urban core of Dallas and Fort Worth as a massive gravitational center.
Got it.
As prices in the core became completely unmoored from local median incomes over the last 5 years, the density and the cost of capital forced buyers outward. They moved to the first ring of suburbs.
Which pushed up prices there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when those suburbs became prohibitively expensive, the buyer pool was pushed to the second ring. What the 2026 maps reveal is that the pricing squeeze has become so intense that the buyer pool is now washing into the exurban and rural counties.
Which brings us directly to places like Jack County. If you are a buyer looking for that elusive $300,000 detached single-family home with a yard, you are no longer looking in Collin or Denton counties.
No, you're priced out.
You are looking at the outer rings. You are driving until you qualify.
Exactly. The remote work revolution structurally enabled this migration, but affordability exhaustion accelerated it. Markets like Jack County or Hood County or Kaufman County were historically defined by local, agricultural, or light industrial economies.
Yeah, totally different pace of life.
But when the wave of DFW Metroplex money arrives, buyers arriving with Metroplex salaries and a desperation for space, it fundamentally transforms the local ecosystem.
It is a double-edged sword for those local communities, isn't it?
It really is.
On one hand, the halo effect brings a massive influx of property tax revenue, which funds local schools and infrastructure. It attracts new commercial development and retail.
But on the other hand, it creates intense friction for longtime residents.
Oh, I bet.
A local worker in Jack County earning a localized wage suddenly finds themselves competing for housing against a remote tech worker pulling a Dallas salary.
The displacement is real.
The economic gravity of the Metroplex distorts everything within a 100-mile radius. It alters the zoning battles, it strains the existing utility infrastructure, and it completely rewrites the baseline for affordable housing in those rural counties.
The exurbs are the new front line of the affordability war.
They are.
So whether you are sitting in a luxury high-rise in the dense center of Dallas or you are managing a property out in the expansive plains of Jack County, you are inextricably linked to this data.
Absolutely.
The macro trends, the multi-billion-dollar standoff in the single-family market, the surge in condo rentals, the collapse in raw land acquisitions, they are rippling outward toward you.
No market within this footprint is isolated from the friction.
It might manifest as a sudden spike in your property tax appraisal, or a delay in new road construction, or a neighbor's house sitting unsold for 174 days, but the ripple reaches every shore.
The variables change, but the underlying pressure is universal.
As we synthesize everything we have unpacked from the February 2026 Net Trays report, the narrative of the Texas real estate market is undeniably one of gridlock.
Yes.
We are observing a single-family market frozen by psychological price anchoring and mortgage rate lock-ins. We are seeing a desperate pivot toward manufactured homes and a highly competitive, yield-heavy rental market serving as a massive waiting room for displaced buyers.
And we've exposed how micro-market averages can completely mask the brutal reality of stagnant, highly discounted transactions.
Right. And most concerningly, we've tracked a 50% collapse in land transaction volume that practically guarantees a severe housing shortage as we approach the end of the decade.
It is an ecosystem defined entirely by friction and transition.
We always want to leave you with provocative thought, something to analyze as you look at the market around you this week.
Something to mull over.
The core puzzle here is the sustainability of the standoff. We have millions of homeowners refusing to sell because they will not surrender their 3% mortgages or accept a nominal price cut.
And simultaneously, we have the entire development industry refusing to buy land to build new homes because the cost of capital is too punishing.
Both the existing supply and the future supply are deliberately constrained.
So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the catalyst that breaks the dam?
Because a market cannot hold its breath indefinitely, the pressure has to release.
Exactly. Does a macroeconomic shock force the sellers to capitulate and liquidate their equity? Or do interest rates normalize just enough to incentivize builders to start aggressively acquiring land again?
The equilibrium will be restored, but the mechanism of that restoration is the great unknown.
It is.
What happens when the dam breaks? That is the exact question to carry with you. We appreciate you taking this deep dive into the localized data with us. The next time you are driving through your neighborhood or out through the expanding exurbs and you see a for sale sign that looks a little weathered,
you will understand the complex macroeconomic forces keeping it planted in that yard.
You won't just see a listing, you will see the standoff. Keep your eyes on the data, and we will be right here to analyze the next wave of numbers when they hit.